All right, ladies and gentlemen, Congressman Ro Khanna is here. Welcome to the broadcast. This time, I don't know where you're at right now. There's a lot of snow behind you, and I know you're not in San Francisco. Where are you at, Ro Khanna?
I was at Dartmouth doing a town hall. I was at Stanford last week on AI, and so Dartmouth also was key in developing AI. So we were doing a town hall with students, packed house on the Epstein class and AI. Of course, Iran came up a lot.
Yeah, I actually saw in one of your town halls there were a bunch of constituents that you were addressing that tried to tell you like, no, we have to do regime change in Iran. As a matter of fact, because the Iranian government has been incredibly repressive. Now, that is true. The Iranian government has been incredibly repressive in dealing with their own domestic affairs and in putting down any sort of like resistance movements. Having said that, however, your answer was pretty decent, where you talked about how American intervention is not going to help the Iranian population. And unfortunately, only a couple short days after, we are now seeing that the American and Israeli response is not helpful at all. America has now, since that incident, America and Israel have been bombing Iran. Iran has been retaliating. Where are you at now on this issue?
Well, Thomas Massey and I are introducing the War Powers Resolution to stop this war. I mean, the reality is it's not just unconstitutional, it hasn't worked. It didn't work when we went after Gaddafi. It led to 6 years of civil war in Libya. And people say, oh, Ro, is it a partisan thing against Donald Trump? No, I just told you something that President Obama did, who I admire in many ways, that I disagreed with. This didn't work when we took out Saddam Hussein. The taking out the leader is the easier part. I mean, the hard part is what comes next. And a lot of times, the people within the regime look at what the United States did, and they use that to whip up a angry nationalism, and it leads to more killing and a worse outcome. So you have now a president again who promised to end these wars, to not get us into a regime change war, breaking his promise, spending billions of our dollars on aircraft carriers there, on strikes there, putting our troops at risk, and we don't know what's going to come next.
Yeah, and there is no day after plan, and that much is obviously clear. So I want to ask you very directly: do you believe that getting Congress to vote for the War Powers Act will actually stop this administration, or do you feel as though this administration is going to continue doing whatever it wants to do regardless?
That's a high bar because we've got to not only pass it, but the president's got to sign it, or we've got to have the votes to overturn his veto. Now, when Bernie Sanders and I passed the War Powers Act to help stop the war in Yemen, the President Trump, in his first term, vetoed it, but he voluntarily suspended the refueling of Saudi planes. And by the way, Thomas Massey was involved in that as well. But that was the only time that the War Powers Resolution has ever passed the House or the Senate, when Bernie and I did it. And we did manage to get the war of Yemen to stop, not by force, but by the public pressure. So I believe in this case, the public pressure can matter, especially if we can get more than Massey, if we can get Davidson and a few other Republicans to come vote with us, it matters. And at the very least, we need a unified Democratic Party. And it can't just be this procedural gibberish. Yes, we need to come to Congress, and there is a constitutional right. But we also need to say we are against dumb wars. We're against endless wars in the Middle East. On the substance, we are not for taking unilateral action and engaged in these wars. Of course, the Iranian regime is brutal, and they killed their own citizens, and there was repression, and there's no denying that. But this is not the way to solve the humanitarian matter. We should have had an international coalition with targeted sanctions against the regime. We should have negotiated with China, which currently is providing cover for the regime. Why wasn't this part of the bilateral negotiations with China to get to be tougher on the sanctions with Iran? We should have taken it to the UN Security Council. We did none of the hard work of diplomacy.
So A question I have for you is also the weight of this responsibility that falls on the opposition party, the Democratic Party. Um, when you announced that you and Thomas Massey were going to work to put together the War Powers resolution, um, we were already at the heat of the escalation of the Armada moving in the direction of Iran, and it's now been 12 days after Trump openly postured about attacking Iran. Do you feel as though there were some setbacks internally within the Democratic Party as well that this war powers resolution could have been implemented faster, or at least taken on faster?
It could have, but it wasn't leadership. It was the cracks in our own coalition when Josh Gottheimer and Markovitz came out with a statement saying that the Massey Khanna bill was the Protect Ayatollah Khamenei Act. That created division where we felt, okay, are we going to lose 20 to 30 Democrats in the vote, which would have been an incredible signal of weakness. And so we regrouped, and it was a short work week. Johnson cut some of the days, and then we now got 3 days ago or mid last week the consensus. So now I think the defections would be minimal, but we still need a very strong Democratic vote next week.
Where do you think these defections are coming from, especially considering that the recent Gallup poll data showed for the first time ever that the plurality of Americans are actually sympathetic to Palestinians over the Israelis? And this is not even just about Israel Palestine, of course, even though it's obvious that this is Israel's design, Israel's ambition in the region for quite a long time now. Where do you think these defections are actually coming from? Because there's clearly not a lot of Democratic appetite in the base of the party, let alone the base of every party at this point. Independents are majority not in favor of going to war with Iran. By large majorities, Americans are not in favor of going to war with Iran at all. I believe right before the strikes happened, 27% only across the board, with even the Republicans barely meeting 60% support for striking Iran. So where are our politicians, some in your party as well, and plenty in the Republican Party, with the exception of Thomas Massey and maybe a couple others, where are they getting their notes from?
Well, they're the normal neocon pro-war groups. I mean, some of the think tanks, they've wanted a war with Iran, of regime change for decades. People like Lindsey Graham and others affiliated with them. Of course, it's no secret. I mean, APAC has been public saying that they support the strikes, and they've been making the case to members. There are other groups like that that are will paint members as weak on national security or protecting the terrorists if they don't vote. And then, like you mentioned, I was protested. I had 200 or so people shout at me in my own town hall, and that was the pro Iranian American community that was very pro war and pro us getting involved in the Middle East.
Yeah, the YouGov poll from 228 asked if the Americans approve of the U.S. attacks on Iran on Saturday, and 44% said they disapprove, and only 34% said they approve, and 22% said that they were not sure. With the Democratic Party, 70% disapproved and only 10% approved. With the Republican Party, even with the Republican Party, it was 69% approval, 12% disapproval. And amongst the independents, it was, again, a majority disapproval at 52%. So there is no popular appetite for this, even after Donald Trump has conducted these strikes, even down to the Republican Party, where it's only a 69% approval rating, which is fairly low for actions taken by the Trump administration as adjusted to past performance for whatever domestic or foreign policy affair Trump engages in. So, what will it take for our representatives to actually represent the democratic interests of the majority, overwhelming majorities, in your opinion? What can we do as American citizens?
We need the most strong mobilization right now on the Kana Massey War Powers resolution. Just flooding every Democratic leader, every Democratic member of Congress, every Democratic senator saying, "Well, how do we get a unanimous vote? We got to flip Gottheimer. We got to flip Markowitz on this. We got to say this is a time you stand with the Democratic Party in unison, and you stand against a president who's gone to an illegal war that is as that could have repercussions like the Iraq War. It's as consequential a vote. And so, all of your listeners, you've got a huge base. If they can just help get an enormous social media movement that we should become the anti-war party. Look, Donald Trump took that and lied about it, that slogan from us. He said, I'm going to be the pro-peace candidate. I'm going to be the anti-war candidate in 2024. We have got to be the anti-war party. We've got to say that what Trump did in Venezuela was illegal and wrong. What he's doing in Iran is illegal and wrong, and not mince words. You know, some of these Democratic statements, I'm not going to say which ones because I don't want to pick a fight with my own party, but some of these statements, you read it and I don't know what they're saying. It's a bunch of, I have to get to paragraph 6 to understand, well, are they against it? Are they for it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's such a long prelude. I'm thinking, okay, are they going to come out with a Fetterman? I'm for the strikes. And then they're like, no, it's illegal. So just say we're against endless wars. We're against intervention in these cases. We're against spending people's money on these wars where we know from experience from Libya, from Iraq, from what happened in 20 years in Afghanistan, that they don't work.
Do you feel like, yeah, so that's another thing I was going to ask. Do you feel like offering justifications to why there is a necessity for regime change while simultaneously talking about the process in which this regime change is taking place is actually a failure in the response within the Democratic Party for those who choose to speak on this issue on such terms?
I think it should start with the war in Iran is wrong, that we should not be getting involved in another Middle East war, that we should not be spending billions of dollars on this and our aircraft carriers there, that it can foment an ugly Iranian nationalism that could make the situation worse, that it could foment civil war and sectarian violence that could lead to more people being killed. And in that, one can then say that we understand that the Iranian regime is a brutal regime that is killing its own people, and that we call for human rights and we call for the Iranian regime to be sanctioned for what they're doing, to build an international coalition for what against what they're doing, and that we call for the recognition of human rights in these places and standing for that as an international community. But I don't think that what we should be doing is openly calling for regime change with the assumption that the United States' military is going to help facilitate that.
Okay. So you're saying as long as the wording is flipped on and the weight is adjusted in the direction of no war with Iran, but then talking about the Iranian administration's repressive nature is probably a better alternative. Another question.
Yeah, it's
Another
also
question I
truthful.
have is the reason why I'm asking this question is because clearly when these kinds of statements come out, right in the aftermath of the Israeli-American joint strikes on Iran, taking the lives of 200 people, and according to on-the-ground reports so far, there have been not one but two schools that have been potentially targeted and hit with our missiles, very likely. Where there are a lot of young schoolgirls that were slain, up to 51 in the last reports that I saw, and the numbers actually may rise with the total casualty numbers being 80 to 90. I think that the reality of the matter is American bombs are not going to be are not going to cause liberation for the Iranian population. As a matter of fact, especially considering there's no day after plan. Even if there was a day after plan, it still wouldn't cause true sovereignty for the Iranian population. How do you feel about the ways in which Donald Trump is trying to create a mission accomplished banner here by talking about the Ayatollah being potentially killed? Do you feel like this is going to be a battle to fight on the communication strike on the communication side?
Well, we need to see what the reporting is. I've seen the same social media reports that you have, that the Ayatollah may have been killed, and obviously he's a terrible actor. But the question is, what comes next? I mean, is the regime just going to replace him? I mean, it's not clear that just because he's killed, that suddenly that means that there's going to be democratic governance with human rights. I mean, you could still have the IRGC just replace him with someone else. He was aging and frail and likely to pass anyway over the next year. So I think what is important is to see what the facts are and understand that just killing people is the easier part, but the much harder part is building a government that respects human rights and democracy, and that making sure that the country doesn't descend into civil war. It's also about not setting a precedent for Putin or Xi Jinping or other great powers that if they want, they can just go in and assassinate other country leaders if they disagree with the regime.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. Well, with Putin, he has done similar things in the past as well, but I don't necessarily think that the hypocrisy argument is our strongest one. But that's my own personal perspective here. The thing that I wanted to before I let you go, and I thank you so much for coming on. Um, one of the one of the questions I have here is about where we go from here. Like where we go from here. What's your assessment on what the retaliation is looking like so far? What the retaliation is going to bring about? Because it does seem like this is going to be an extended conflict.
Well, first of all, I'm hopeful that it is not extended. I'm hopeful that we can extricate ourselves. I'm hopeful that our service members aren't going to get killed. I'm hopeful that we're not going to have killings of young girls in Iran. Again, I haven't been able to confirm that, but I've seen the same reports on social media as you have of this horrific sense of young girls being killed in schools, and I will find out. But we need it to stop, and we need to have some sense of statesmanship and diplomacy now take over. And that's why I'm hoping. That's why I want rearrange my schedule to come on, because you reach a lot of people, and this vote is going to be one of the most critical historic votes in their country's history. I mean, people are talking about the Epstein vote, and that was important, very important for survivors and justice and elite impunity. But this vote may even have deeper consequences, which Massey and I are bringing, which is that a clear no to getting into another war in the Middle East. I mean, that's really what's at stake. And so my hope is that we will see anti-war mobilization around the country, that we can get a decisive vote on this, and that we can stop us from putting in ground troops, stop us from having forces there that are going to be in a drawn-out fight with the regime.
Or at least create a legal structure to later down the line have punishments if necessary, if the Democrats actually do win the majority come midterm elections, and draw up articles of impeachment potentially. One thing I will ask is, you were able to create a successful popular mobilization around the release of the Epstein files, and clearly this was something that Donald Trump ran on personally. You were able to take advantage of the base of support, the Republican side of the conversation, also wanting transparency around who was actually financially involved with Jeffrey Epstein, who was actually potentially a co-conspirator. And this is the reason why that public pressure caused even Donald Trump to sign into law, something that he's currently not following through on. Having said that, what are some of the more malleable? Who are some of the more malleable colleagues that you have in Congress on the other side of the political spectrum across the aisle that could actually receive a little bit of pressure to help people like ourselves potentially whip votes? Because it's very clear that Mike Johnson is going to be a hurdle in that endeavor.
Well, I think Representative Davidson is a key vote. Representative Bacon is a key vote. Representative Brian Fitzpatrick is a key vote here. Someone like Andy Briggs is a persuadable person. Representative Gozar has opposed military interventions. And then on our side, of course, you've got to get Moskowitz, you've got to get Gottheimer, you've got to get Lauren Gillen, and we need a strong statement from all of the party leaders that we are not going to be for another Middle East war. And so, to the extent that people are mobilizing online for strong statements in support of Massey and my bill, that will help. I mean, we've seen it from some people. AOC issued a very strong statement saying no war. We'll support Khanna Massey's bill. She's going to do it. We need other clear, decisive statements. Of course, Pramila Jayapal and Mark Pocan, and there have been a number of people in the Progressive Caucus, Greg Kazar, who have. But we need as many of those as possible.
Yeah. Last question I have for you is you talked about potentially pressuring the Iranian government in order to bring about democracy in Iran. There was an alternative means that previous administrations utilized, one that you actually brought up yourself. Barack Obama's administration was able to successfully facilitate the JCPOA if the nuclearization was a major problem, which I don't think it is. Um, isn't there an alternative as far as the utilization of sanctions and the ease of sanctions in order to get assurances? And do you believe sincerely that this conversation, these negotiations, were actually about uh, uh, these conversations that were taking place between the Trump administration and Iran, with a lot of Israeli intervention and influence as well, were truly about denuclearizing Iran, ensuring that they only have, civilian grade enriched uranium? Or do you believe that that was just a casus belli to create an opportunity to strike Iran, to destabilize Iran?
I believe that there were people who were negotiating, thinking they really were going to solve the nuclear issue, but the Omanis who were mediating said that they were close to a deal, that they were making progress, and yet Donald Trump, someone got in his ear about a regime change, and he's gone at it from a regime change, as is evidence, if you believe the reporting about the Ayatollah, that there's allegations and evidence that he made the first strike may have been on one of the first strikes would have been on the Ayatollah. So obviously their mission was a regime change and not just the nuclear deal. I supported the JCPOA. The Omanis were saying that the United States could have gotten a better deal than even the JCPOA. We could have gotten a deal on not on dismantling the ballistics, on dismantling any and giving up any enriched uranium and storage. But we chose not to do it. And I, at this point, believe Donald Trump is engaged in a regime change war.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ro Khanna, for coming on, and I hope to
Always
hear
enjoy
from
it.
you.
Thank
And
you.
good luck on hopefully being able to win the votes. And we'll try to do our very best out here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Hasan.
All right. That was Representative Ro Khanna for a short interview